feel like Gordon Bombay would have taken his career to even further heights.
Everything's flashy, everything's cocaine, everything's fun.
Open wide for some soccer.
I don't care what you think about what your personal thoughts are at home. I care that you hate the Cowboys.
Call this college ruled.
Welcome, everybody, to the Sports Experience Podcast. I'm Chris. This is Dom. We're just a couple of comics who love sports, out here talking sports. Do all the social media stuff. Follow us, comment, share it, if you will. We're going to start off a block of episodes. This is probably the most unique block, but it's hard to deny this era in Big East basketball. We're going to talk Big East college basketball coaches. Pretty much 80s, 90s.
It's pretty much 80s, 90s, but like there's so many like wrestling where we're going to have to cut it down to some.
Yep.
But I mean, we're kicking things off. We just finished 250, so we're going back to 249 with our boy Dikembe Mutombo, and who do we got?
And we got John Thompson.
Big John.
The Georgetown legend. When I remember looking him up because it's just so weird where you just don't really know stuff about people. You're just like, all this stuff I just never knew. I didn't know Georgetown was like the only place he coached pretty much.
Oh, really? Oh, shit, yeah.
Yeah.
He's not Mr. Georgetown. He's Mr. Washington, D.C.
Yes. Yeah, seriously, though.
Like, pretty crazy.
It's cool. It's just stuff like that where you're just like, oh, I thought he might have done like one of those little colleges before. And then, no, they just like straight up brought him in.
Somebody was at Coffeyville Community College. No. So... John Robert Thompson Jr., born September 2nd, 1941, born and raised in Washington, D.C.
Yep.
Born very poor and also born segregated in these days in our nation's capital because these were times of their time, Chris.
Yep. Men of their times. It was not a great era for black men. Let's just say that. It's interesting that he was one of those guys that was just huge all the time. You know what I mean? He was just big for his age.
Yeah, he talked about how basically his friends had to drag him outside to play basketball. He wanted to play baseball instead. He's like, well, they're like, yeah, you're not going to be Babe Ruth.
Well, I was just going to say, like, I feel like nowadays that you might get more encouraged to do that with all these like 6'8" guys who are out there playing baseball.
I know, right?
But yeah, he had to have played basketball. It was like exactly like the Dikembe Mutombo thing where it was just like no more karate for you.
Although, oh man, I can't stop thinking about that. Just him wearing a gi.
I dream about it.
Like just and then straight up roundhousing people.
Yes,
oh, man.
Just a giant roundhouse. It's going to be like that Street Fighter character. His leg just extends all the way. You're just like, oh my God.
One of those extending boxing gloves.
Yep.
So his parents, they valued education.
Yes,
From
very.
The research that I did, they were very on top of making sure that he got a quality education, even though they found out his eyesight was bad, which is why he was doing so bad at school early on. His dad told him basically to the extent of, get an education. It's the one thing the white man won't take from you.
It's totally right. And he actually, if you look at his coaching throughout Georgetown, he passes that down where we know some coaches don't really emphasize academics. And
certain Caucasian coaches who don't care for John, they don't really value education.
Certain men from the regions of Caucasus.
From the Caucasus.
Yeah, but it makes Georgetown not just a viable basketball team, but just like a really important thing for these guys going through on the basketball team because they have this education that his dad really instills in him. It makes me think of how many kids, because the glasses thing was just like, oh, that's from the era.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, how many kids did they think was just straight up stupid? They're just like, oh no, I can't see that.
You can't read them, can you?
Exactly.
So
those kids can't read.
So his mom sends him to Catholic schools growing up. So
Archbishop, which is pretty classic.
Archbishop John Carroll High School, and he joins the basketball team. And not only is he large, not only is he dominant, he's also the hardest worker on the team. And because of this and all the other talented players in his school, they win 58 straight games.
3 city championships in a row. They were... And this is the thing is sometimes you get a mix of players where you're just like, yeah, we can't do anything. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like you have John Thompson, who's probably 6'8" at this time. Yeah. And you're just like, oh yeah, he's the tallest man on the court.
Well, he said one of his quotes later after he was done at Georgetown, he basically had said to the extent of people were like, oh, you had so many talented players, it must be easy to coach. He's like, that is the exact opposite. It's like managing personalities and keeping everybody happy and everything going. So
you're right. You kind of want a bunch of blank slates and then come in and run your stuff. And to that point, who we'll probably talk about later, he coaches one of the most volatile guys.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean, and does him justice. Like yeah,
absolutely. So he finishes high school, second team parade All-American.
Yep.
And he decides he has tons of scholarship offers too. He does not go to Georgetown because obviously segregated and things like that. Elects to go to a Catholic school, Providence. Not only for the basketball and for the education, but because of the NBA's territorial draft, where a former player at George Washington, who is now in charge of the Boston Celtics, Red Auerbach is.
I saw that, and it's such an interesting thing to pick your call, because we always talk about this being the farm system for the NBA. These
student athletes.
Couldn't even get it out. We almost did it together. But that was one of his biggest thoughts of going to Providence. He was just like, oh, yeah, if I get drafted, I'll get drafted by the Celtics.
You don't want to play for the Fort Wayne Pistons? God.
Exactly.
So he's 6'10", about 250, 260, and in Providence, obviously he can't play his freshman year, but he puts together a really good college career.
He does.
For the Friars there.
And proves that he is a really good big man. I thought it was interesting. The Friars went to their first NCAA tournament with him. Mm-hmm. They were on the 63 NIT champs.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And this is the other thing that I think people don't really recognize is back then it wasn't so dominant of the NCAA tourney being the big one. It was almost like you had two different ones where NCAA was bigger, but it wasn't that much more dominant.
Well, this is before they forced the teams, if you were selected for the tournament, you had to play in it.
Yes.
Yeah, so like you could go to the NIT for, the exposure, because it was New York.
Bobby Knight did that one time. Yeah, it was New York. Bobby Knight did that one time with Army, and it was one of the last times because they were like, all right, if you get into, we need to make one tourney the main tourney, and if you get into that, you go.
The NIT is like the re-gifting tournament.
But exactly what you said, it's in the Garden.
At this point, it's like, it's nothing what it is today.
No.
It's like, they're, I think, playing the entire tournament at the Garden.
Yeah.
It's not till like, I think the 70s where they do like the first few rounds in these home arenas of the teams.
Yep.
Everything's in the Garden. There's so much exposure. I think, wasn't it the Walt Clyde Frazier episode where he was noticed at the NIT?
Yeah, I think so.
Because he was at the Garden. So,
yeah, because he was at the Garden. Yeah. That's what I mean. So they were the 63 NIT champs, which is a huge thing, and then they go to the NCAA for the first time. So he really is a Friars legend, and he ends up leaving them.
You know who they lost to in that first tournament appearance?
No.
Villanova.
Oh, God, that's horrible. I didn't know that.
What about that spider web?
Oh, man. That's beautiful.
But his senior season, I didn't want to add, because people always assume he's the coach. He's just Georgetown's coach because he was there forever. His senior year at Providence, 26.2 points a game.
Yep.
14 and a half boards. He was and he goes to the NBA.
Yes.
Drafted in the third round. Whoa. Sorry, Admiral.
So he heard about those rebounds. Admiral was like, I'll grab it.
By the Celtics in the 64 NBA draft.
It was almost like it was set up like that.
Almost like set up like that. You know, how they cooked everything like. But goes to the Celtics, and, well, you're not going to play a whole hell of a lot because of who's there, and it's Bill Russell.
And he backs up Bill Russell for 2 years. Did you see his nickname on it?
The Caddy.
The Caddy, because he's going to back him up.
Carrying his bags.
And just like we were saying, that he pretty much planned to go and play for the Celtics. We get an expansion draft.
Well, he won 2 titles. Both seasons he played in Boston. Let's bring that up.
Yep. Back-to-back World Series, just kidding, world champion. But like we were saying, because I tried to look up his minutes, and Bill Russell played so many minutes.
Bill Russell was like a war horse. He never
really,
came out of the game.
That's what I mean. It's really crazy because you're like, oh, he played 5 minutes.
You want to play for the Celtics?
It's crazy.
But the one thing is, what he found out in his first 2 years, it wasn't that he was backing up Bill Russell. You know, he was working hard, everything like that. He just didn't like the NBA lifestyle.
I know.
That didn't suit
travel,
him. With his wife and his kids. He just, or I think one of his kids was about to be born. Like, he just didn't enjoy the lifestyle the NBA brought.
Well, and it's interesting, and I wonder if he would have stayed on the Celtics if he would have stayed in the NBA. But that choice of the expansion draft coming, him going to a different team, he was just like, yeah, I'm done.
Yeah.
And it's not like a ton of money at this time either.
No, you're making dick in the NBA
so
right
it's
now.
yeah. Especially as a backup.
The Bulls took him in the expansion draft, and he's like, nope, I'm going to go become a head basketball coach and a guidance counselor, Mr. Mackey style.
I was just going to say
Anthony High School in Washington.
Now we get into the John Thompson that we all know.
Yes.
And this is what I said in the beginning of the podcast that made me so interesting. He makes the jump from 3 years at a high school or 4 years, whatever it is,
College, yeah.
to coaching Georgetown. It's a crazy jump, but it worked so well.
So from 66 to 72, he coaches them. He goes 122-28.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. So obviously, he wants to stay in D.C. You know, this is where he's from. This is home. And Georgetown, a local religious school, needs a basketball. When they brought him in, the guy in charge was like, you know, you can make the NIT every once in a while. That'd be nice.
Well, they were the dregs.
They were crappy.
There's all these things that had to go together for him to get this as like a black man, an ex-NBA player, where they don't give them respect, especially big men. There's like all of this stuff that goes with him getting this. And I saw they were just like, when he got the Georgetown job, there were other coaches that were in line that people were like, whoa, we're not giving it to this white guy with silver hair. What the hell is going on here?
What's crazy, though, is every level, though, it's the smartest decision. What does he do at every single level he plays or coaches at? He freaking wins.
Yeah.
He's a
winner.
Dennis Reynolds looking in the mirror. You're a winner. You're going
right.
to peak all over this city, all over this capital city, John Thompson. So they were 3-23 the season before, much like Lute Olson when he shows up in Tucson.
And really turns a program around because literally the next year they're 500.
Yeah, and 74-75, he has them in their first NCAA tournament since 1943.
Since World War II.
World War II wasn't even over. Electric Boogaloo. It's still going.
So, and to whoever hired him's credit, I bet at this point it was just like, told you. Because I bet there was backlash with him coming in.
Yeah, I mean, over the course of the next 4 seasons, they're in the NIT. They're having some early tournament exits, but he's built them into a legitimate competitive program. And by 79-80, them and a few other East Coast independent schools join the Big East, or create the Big East under his former athletic director at Providence, Dave Gavitt. And the one thing I think I really wish they would have mentioned it in that documentary, though, is like when they created this conference and everyone's like, oh, all these teams are so great out the gate. It's like, yeah, they were all good before you made it.
Yep.
Well, I shouldn't say all of them, but most of them were like on the upward trajectory.
I was going to say they were viable programs. You know what I mean? Where they were making the NIT and the NCAA turning a bunch. So like them coming together made so much sense. And then we get into the golden era of the Big East.
Yeah. So in 79-80, they go all the way to the Elite Eight.
Yep.
They lose to Lute Olson in Iowa, but next year
I like that one.
Yep.
I saw that. I was just like, there's my guy.
Yeah. Silver Fox, they go 20-12 the following year. They lose in the first round to James Madison in the tournament. But one important thing happens that season after 80-81. They get a certain freshman frontcourt player from Boston, Patrick Ewing.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, they get Patty Ewing.
And
for 81-82.
81-82. Mm-hmm. And then I was just going to say, and then they become, and in this era, 82 to 85, Georgetown was probably one of the best college teams, you know?
I mean, we've talked about it with Hakeem in the Drexler episodes, like how dominant Phi Slamma Jam is.
Yeah.
They're not even the best program, I believe, in these 4 years. To me, it's Georgetown.
Yeah.
In this 4-year window, how freaking... They left a couple on the table, Chris.
They did.
They left a couple on the table, which we'll get into.
to go back to thinking that, I'm sorry, the Providence loss is still.
I mean, it's not poetic justice because you feel bad.
I know,
but,
it's
like,
still
you're
tickling me.
Oh God! So 81-82, they go 30-7. They're dominant. They got Sleepy Floyd, Bill Martin, Anthony Jones, also Eric Smith, Freddie Brown, and Patty Ewing.
And that was the thing. They had Sleepy and Pat Ewing, and it was one of those dominant teams. Like
they scared the hell out. Patrick Ewing scared the hell out of people.
Oh man, he was so good.
So they get the number 1 seed in the West. They go all the way to the Final Four, and they beat Louisville in the semifinal, 50-46. I think Louisville was defending champions, or they had won the year prior, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So they face in the final. They're in New Orleans. It's the largest attended, over 61,000 fans for college basketball crowd. And they're playing North Carolina and a freshman who's a dream ruiner.
And the shot, or at least like the... It's so crazy.
This game is so good, though.
I was just gonna say, it's so crazy to think all these guys matching up. Fucking Jordan against Ewing.
I think Sam Perkins was on North Carolina at this point too. Like, I mean, and in this game, neither team led by more than 4 points, which is like, if you're the television people, you're like, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
They're up 62-61 with 18 seconds left. And then they give the ball to Michael Jordan, and he does Michael Jordan things.
It's like,
why must you deny everyone, sir? You were just like, nah, Patrick Ewing, I'm going to get you in college and later.
Yep.
I'm going to be out in Atlantic City gambling and doing terrible things, but also ruining your dreams, too.
That's true. Me and Rodman, that's how we do it.
So he makes it with 18 seconds left. They're taking the worst part is it wasn't a buzzer beater.
No, they had a possession.
They take it up the floor. And Fred Brown thinks he's throwing it to Eric Smith and gives it to James Worthy on accident. And they lose 63-62. But they've arrived now because I think this is the Big East first Final Four team.
Yep.
And they've put the conference on the map with a guy nobody really thought, was going to be a coach.
Well, and he was the first black coach to ever make. This is the first Final Four that a black coach took. And he said this, where he was talking to, like, when he was like looking back on it, he was just like, oh yeah, I didn't really realize that there were no other black coaches when I went around scouting for these guys.
Yeah.
And like, it was one of those things where it was like, well, I mean, I think he's going to come because, but
like,
it's an interesting thing to look back on with his growing up segregated, being the first black coach to have a Final Four team, and then establishing Georgetown in this era as a dominant force.
He cared about success and professionalism and did so in the face of a media that was really trying to go out and get him.
Yes,
and go out and
seriously.
get his team. The Hoya paranoia stuff that I was reading about, like, yeah, no. I mean, this dude was doing it in front of, like, a lot of people who didn't want to see him succeed.
Yes, they said he would yell at refs too much. There was like all of this.
Have you seen Jim Boeheim
Exactly.
whine? Oh, God.
It's crazy when you see how much other coaches yell at refs and how quickly he would get teed up. It's like, wait, what's going on here?
I think he just scares people because he's got
6'10".
that towel.
Yes.
Just strangle somebody with it.
I'm glad we brought up the towel because that's one of my. It's when I think of him sweating with a towel in a full suit.
He had it on. Did you see why he had it? It was a tribute to his mom because she always used to have it wearing it around the kitchen, the towel, like, just to be ready at a moment's notice.
That's
At least
awesome.
He wasn't trying to eat it like Jerry Tarkanian.
That's true.
It was not for weird purposes.
Sweet. That's great.
So 82-83, they go 22-10. They add David Wingate this year, but they end up losing to Memphis in the second round.
Yeah, early exit.
But now we get into 83-84. And this is a very special season for Thompson.
For Thompson and Ewing. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's
Ewing
it's
too.
such a it really is one of those things. This is why I love college basketball, because a lot of the times it takes 4 years for a team there's like we lost again in a shitty way, and now we took it. You know what I mean?
Not only did they take it, my God, they won the regular and conference Big East championships.
Yep.
34-3, peppering in old Reggie Williams into that lineup. They beat Syracuse in the tournament final. You want to talk about this game? Where he basically they claim he intimidated the ref on that hard foul late.
I was just going to say, this is one of those things I was talking about where it's like they can't just like let them have a win. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous.
Boeheim threw that temper tantrum in the press conference.
Yep.
So
This is what I mean about these.
Okay. The Big East was just a hard conference to play in overall. It was tough. It was physical.
Yep.
It was mean. All of the teams in the conference were this way. But Georgetown, seemingly by the press and everyone else, were singled out
Were
for
rougher,
certain reasons. Maybe we don't know.
But the thing I love is the coaches in this era, they're almost characters in themselves. Where you're just like Boeheim blowing up, Thompson keeping it totally cool because he's just like, yeah, we won.
Then you pepper in the Guidos. It's like a sitcom.
And you pepper in the Guidos because it's the Big East.
It is. So, first round they survive SMU 37.
How you guys gonna celebrate with some gabagool? I'll tell you what.
You don't. Whenever there's gabagool around, it's a celebration.
It is.
So in the first round, they survive SMU 37-36. Why? Because there's no shot clock, and we're gonna get into this later.
Yep, because it comes into play.
It definitely comes into play.
To John Thompson's credit, that's it. It's actually good coaching.
It is, yeah.
Even though it's boring.
But teams are trying to slow them down.
Yeah.
That's the thing. That it's such a great coach. He'll play to pretty much anything.
But that's what I mean. He'll play to whatever tempo.
Yeah. They beat UNLV, Dayton, and then Kentucky all by double digits. Then they go to the final
Against Houston.
with Hakeem, not Clyde Drexler.
That's
He
right.
left.
Just Hakeem.
Just Hakeem. Reggie Williams and Wingate have huge games for them. It was nice at the end because this guy was a senior. Fred Brown, the one that threw away the ball.
Oh, yeah.
He's on that team, and there's that iconic shot of him and John Thompson hugging after the game, which is just like, that's dope.
That's what I mean. That's the stuff that I love about college, where it's like he messed up and now it comes back.
Totally redeemed yourself.
Yep.
Still want to go to Aspen? So they win 84-75. And this is an important win, not only because they win the national championship, but John Thompson is the first African-American head coach to win an NCAA
He has so many of those where he's like, he really was the first big.
But he never made it like
a thing.
Yeah, to where it was just like, yeah, I'm black and I won. I would like to win more, please.
Yeah.
Like,
no, it was all about basketball and winning and education.
Mind you, he's graduating most of his players, upwards of 90+%.
I think I saw it said 96% of his team, something like that. It is a very high, especially for college basketball, because you get those people who just 1 year, 2 year drop off. You know what I mean? It's a...
Well, he had a former nun. He hired her as the academic advisor for the team. It was the first time a program had an academic advisor for college basketball. So that was something, important. He even had the deflated ball in his office saying, like, these 8 pounds of air don't, like, define your entire life.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, dude kept it real, even though everyone kind of didn't want to support him for certain reasons, which is just kind of crappy.
I saw coming off our Dikembe Mutombo episode that he emphasized non-basketball things where a lot of other coaches were just talking basketball, and John Thompson was like, no, like, you have a life to live outside of this.
Maybe you shouldn't be a doctor because that's like a lot of concentration.
Your hands are too big.
We're going to need... I don't know how you're going to pull something out of somebody.
Yeah.
I just don't. But... you're smart and you should get a degree.
That's right.
That's what he did. So they run it back, though, the next year. In 84, they run it all the way back because I don't know if anybody like really...
Not the big... Yeah.
Not the big names
no,
left.
Because this is Ewing's 4th year. You know what I mean?
Williams,
So-
you got Wingate.
Yep.
I mean, they're stacked and they're mean. They're 35-3 in the Big East. Funny game that year on February 27th, 1985. They play St. John's in the Garden, and to basically alleviate, because St. John's is ranked number 1 and Georgetown is number 2, and to basically, cut the pressure. He wears the same type of sweater as St. John's coach.
Oh,
So
yeah.
he comes out, and it just like completely takes the edge off.
Yep.
And
What a genius move.
yeah, they won by 16 points that night, and then they just rolled through the rest of the schedule. They beat St. John's again in the Big East tournament, 77-59. No. They beat them later in the tournament, and then they roll into the Final Four.
Mm-hmm.
They roll and they play St. John's again, and that was they beat them by 16 points, and that's an important Final Four because that year, first probably only time this will ever happen. 3 teams from the same conference make it.
Yeah.
You have St. John's, Georgetown,
And
who else, Chris?
Villanova. Those
8-seed Villanova Wildcats, because everyone's named the Wildcats.
those dirty Villanovans.
Oh,
And-
dirty Philadelphians.
Well, I'll tell you what's interesting is I don't think somebody out of conference could have beaten them, but Villanova probably had seen them a couple of
They
times.
probably played them
and-
3 times.
Yep. It's one of those things where it's such a great matchup for Villanova that you're just like, all right.
Well, we know them, and we know that there's no shot clock.
Yep.
We have to play a perfect game,
They did.
but not good like 1 out of 100.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm saying not good like 1 out of 1,000,000. And Raleigh Massimino's like, yes!
Yeah.
Telling me there's a chance.
It really is one of those crazy stories where you're like, and it really establishes the Big East, having all 3 of them in the Final Four and having an underdog do what you want in March, having an underdog beat the powerhouse.
April 1st, April Fool's Day, 1985, they play this game. Villanova shot over 78% from the field.
I bet Villanova's never done that in their history of college basketball. Do you know what I mean? I bet that's like their highest shooting percentage ever.
This was the year, then it went from down to 45 seconds to 35
Oh, yeah, to
30. And yeah, they lost 66-64.
Yep.
And it's one of those where it's like that giant Super Bowl against the perfect Patriots, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Like where everything just it just broke your way.
Yep.
Despite, I'm not saying that Villanova is not great, but I don't know if the better team won that. The more efficient team won that day.
There you go.
That's a good one.
I like it.
So this caps off a 4-year period where John Thompson went to 3 Final Fours,
Yeah.
3 title games too. I mean, that's
It's pretty
hell of a
impressive.
run.
I saw from 84 to 86, his regular season record was like 69-7. Like they were
Yeah.
a dominant team, and I think maybe would be talked about more if they had that back-to-back championship. But
these are the last Final Fours for him.
yep,
Says by 86-87, they're in the Elite Eight and they're favored. They lose to Rick Pitino and Providence there in 86-87. Then we get into 87-88. They lose to Temple. But by 88-89, they got Rejection Row.
I was going to say
and you're thinking they're turning it around.
they got Morning and they got African gentleman who came to be a doctor.
Good old Dikembe doing his high kicks. 88-89, they go 29-5, but they end up losing to Duke in the Elite Eight because that's when their
Duke's turning
reign
it
of
on.
terror begins in college basketball. Then by 1991, they lost to UNLV in the second round when they were trying to run it back. You know where they lost the game at? McHale Center.
Oh, that's
I
interesting.
read that
That's cool.
on the internet. But by 92-93, there was the first year they didn't make the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
In that run.
They went 14-year streak of making it.
Yeah.
And it's wild to think of the program that he took over to it is in 91, a disappointment not to make it,
Yeah, but they go to the NIT and they advance all the way to the final. Unfortunately, they lose. They don't win like he did back when he was an undergrad.
To Villanova, just kidding.
Villanova. Sam What if he just had those sleepless nights like those motherfuckers?
Yep.
Bastards. And then 94, 95, he takes a chance on a player we did an episode on.
I was just going to say, now we get into one of the most volatile players
because the team's not based around the big men anymore.
No, with interactions with coaches. This is what people say. So we get to Allen Iverson, probably one of the best point guards, best crossover.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
And he is known for butting heads with coaches, but I've never heard that as a report from Georgetown where like they ever butt heads.
Well, I mean, John Thompson was one of the only, not the only big name coach who took a chance on him after his league. If you want to learn about his legal trouble, go listen to the episode. But yeah, he was. It was almost like Randy Moss coming out of high school,
interesting,
where people didn't want to take any sort of chance on him.
Yeah.
But John Thompson was like that. That was the thing, though. Is I think a lot of it is because his background was in education and as an educator that. I think that helped him smoothly transition into coaching and, really get through to some people who had troubles in their lives.
And see maybe like, because I'm pretty sure they definitely had conversations, but I'm pretty sure he was just like, yeah, I do want to do this basketball. You know what I mean? It was like a commitment to it. So,
he was never talking about practice at Georgetown.
Thank you.
He wanted to go to practice there.
We're out here talking about practice?
Larry Brown, he didn't want to practice for. John Thompson, yes. His first year, they end up going to the Sweet 16 and lose to North Carolina. Then in 95, 96, they're really good. Because this is Iverson's last year before he's drafted number 1 overall.
I was going to say, and he really established himself as like this dominant guard at this time where you're just like, oh, so many people miss that.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the only way he wouldn't have been the number 1 pick that year is if Tim Duncan decided not to go back to school.
Yep.
But they go all the way to the Elite Eight and then lose to UMass. And last 3 years, kind of a struggle for John there at Georgetown.
Oh, did you see why he officially retired?
No, I don't think so. Why?
So his official statement was he was having marital problems and he wanted to be a better family guy.
Yeah.
And if you look at the last 3 years, not that he had like checked out, but he wasn't. It wasn't the same program kind of thing.
I think as far as they got in those last couple of years was the first round of the tournament.
Yeah.
The NIT, and then, he resigns
99.
January 8th, 99, yeah. So he's out.
And he's out, and he lets his assistant take over, and that doesn't really work out great.
But his son
comes in, and that works out better.
Runs it back. He makes the Final Four in 2007.
Yep.
So he breaks that drought for the university. Did want to bring up a couple of things. Internationally, he was an assistant on a gold medal team in 76 for the United States, and he was the last head coach of an all-amateur
Olympic
team.
Yep.
In 88, they won it was that David Robinson, Mitch Richmond team.
Yep.
So, because those they tried to take it to the Sabone zone and it didn't work, and they're like, well, let's just make the dream team.
Well, it's weird to think how many times we brought up that with Sabonis, with Robinson.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, John Thompson was the coach of that team.
Fuck it. Let's just do a Mitch Richmond episode when we're done with this block. I think he's in the Hall of Fame now.
That sounds good.
So his career record at Georgetown, 596 wins, 239 losses. NCAA champion, 3 Final Fours. 26 of his players were drafted over that span. At a school he inherited at 3 and 23.
2 number ones.
2 number ones.
And not just one position, so a center and a guard.
8 in the first round, like Mutombo. That's a good example. 3-time Big East Coach of the Year. And, just an overall... He was a fantastic coach when a lot of people didn't want him to be a fantastic coach.
And this is what everybody said was he was a fantastic human being that like let them be more than just basketball players.
Yeah.
Be more than just student athletes.
Look, I know you're not getting paid, but trust me, you'll want this degree thing to work out.
Well, Ewing, who is the current Georgetown basketball coach, literally said he was just like, he like changed my life and shaped me into like this professional basketball player.
And he started basketball late too.
Yep.
Patrick Ewing. So
Another thing that John Thompson saw, he was just like, "Nah, you're big enough. I'll teach you." Like he would. That's what I mean. He would probably almost prefer. He was just like, "Come on in. I'll teach you."
you're like Bill Russell, only better.
Yeah,
Like if you let me mold you, you'll be better.
Yep.
Not now, but maybe later.
exactly.
So John Thompson did want to. Oh, interesting fact. I found out he was supposed to be on one of the 9/11 flights. Did
No
you read that?
way.
Yeah. He was supposed to be on the Flight 77 that hit the Pentagon.
Oh my God.
Apparently, the ticket agent removed him from the flight before it took off.
That's crazy.
Yeah, he was supposed to be on one of the 9/11 flights.
That's some Final Destination shit.
They're coming after him. But
he did pass away a couple
did
of years.
pass away August 30th, 2020, which very tragic.
Yeah.
But dude lived a hell of the impact he had on so many of these
So many
athletes.
people, yeah.
So many athletes we've done episodes on.
I know, that's
already.
why I love it. And for John Thompson, we hate Villanova.
Yes, we do.